Hi, it's Jeannie here with a new video for you. I thought it would be nice to do something in some Christmas colors. So I've got some photos that I took of berries, and I thought I've been wanting to do this, a painting of these for a while. So I thought now would be a really good time to do that. And I've been wanting to come back to you and do some more videos. So here we go. I've got my drawing out, and if you would like to follow along, I'm going to post a picture of my drawing and of the image, and so you guys are welcome to use those and just follow along with me as I paint. I'm going to start with my three colors that I used in the last painting, which was the roses with the little bluebird. I thought that would be nice to show you how I can come up with these colors by still using my my three colors. And those three colors are Winsor Blue Green Shade, Permanent Rose, and Winsor Yellow. So I'm going to put some color out on my palette. A little bit of the red, a little bit of the yellow, and the Winsor Blue. And I'm just going to start with some light washes to begin my painting. Right here we have some nice yellow greens and some oranges in here. So I'll show you how I approach those. I'm working on dry paper right now. And I've got my Winsor Yellow and my Winsor Blue Green Shade. Taking some more Winsor Yellow. These are just some nice light washes to start the painting out. I'm going to take a little bit of my Permanent Rose and run it right into that leaf. That gives me a little variety in color. And then I'm going to touch it with some yellow. And then I'm going to come back in, dry my brush, and just lift out some of that extra pigment and water. Let's come up into this leaf here. We'll kind of approach it the same way. The Winsor Yellow and the Winsor Blue Green Shade. When you're using the Winsor Blue Green Shade, it's a very powerful, strong blue. So water it down quite a bit so that when you're doing your early washes, you're not getting too dark too soon. At least that would be my advice to you. I'm going to take some more of the Winsor Blue Green Shade, and I'm going to come in this area back in here is my shadow areas behind those leaves. I'll bring a little bit of that into here as well. And then I'm going to come right into this leaf down here. A little clear water to soften that edge. And here we go. I'm going to bring in some Permanent Rose first. Permanent Rose. Then into my Winsor Blue Green Shade. And a little bit kind of negative painting around my berries at the moment. And then coming in with my Winsor Yellow and just pulling that all that color right down to the bottom of my image. And then I'll wick up the extra moisture that's there. Let's drop in a little bit more yellow into that leaf. About right in here, and how about right in here? And just let that float out. That's nice. In here. Here's another leaf. I'll just paint that yellow. Very, very light right now. Now, one of the things that I really like doing is once I've painted an area, I love to come back in and lift a little pigment out before an area dries. So see how that's lifting up? That's going to give me a little bit of highlight here, or light shining through the leaf. You can also come in, I use my little finger, prop up my hand, and bring my brush almost vertical, and then I'm just pulling, 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 and that'll give me a hint of the veins of the leaf. Sometimes when you do this, you don't get very good results. You know, I'm not seeing a lot of results. Maybe if I come back in, try one more time. There we go. That's a little better. See how that moved the pigment a little bit more. If the paper is too dry or too wet, you'll have trouble making those lifts happen. Look at this, how nice. This is a little blossom happening here, and I'm really liking that, so I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to come into, these are the stems on some of the berries, and they're catching some really nice light, and so I'm going to lift a little bit of pigment out there, using again my little finger, holding my brush vertically to the paper. And let's see, let's lift out a little pigment right along the center vein of this leaf. Okay, that's a nice start there. How about starting on a couple of these berries? Let's try that. I'm going to do a wash moving right down the page following the berries. So I'm not going to separate the berries out until later. Okay, so let's see. I think at least that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with some yellow, and I'll start right on this berry. Let's get a little more pigment there. Start right here on the top of the berry. Bring in some rose right up against that. Of course, these will go darker and richer as the painting goes along. This is kind of almost an underpainting idea. It's actually to get my lightest values laid in. Here's some Winsor Blue Green Shade. Just a tiny bit. See how that cools down there in that lower area. Let's do that one more time. And I'm going to go into the next berry. And these are just going to connect at this point. Drop a little yellow right in here. And more permanent rose. On to the next berry. Winsor Yellow. Winsor Yellow. I'm not going over a fair amount of that. Let's think about connecting this one too. And there's another berry hidden behind, back in here. Carry on with the permanent rose. When I'm painting a red object, I'm using primarily the permanent rose and the Winsor Yellow. But I do like bringing in, especially in shadowy areas perhaps, or sometimes in a highlight, the Winsor Blue Green Shade. So there's a little bit of that shadowy area laid in there. Okay, let's go over to the next berry. I'm going to negative paint around this berry. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. A little Kleenex and we'll lift up that mistake. And continue right in here. Winsor Yellow. Permanent Rose. I try to use as large a brush as possible, even when I'm working fairly small. And in a moment, I'll just tell you what size brush this is. It's a Robert Simmons white Sable, the same brush I was using in my roses. It's a number 14. So there it is, Robert Simmons white Sable, number 14. And I'm going to come back right up to where I started. And I'm going to lift out, if I grabbed it in time, some little highlights. Whoa! Almost had a disaster there. And I'm just looking at my photograph for the light spots on the photograph, and then coming in and lifting a little bit of pigment. This is perfect timing here on this berry. If it's too late, it doesn't lift quite as easily. But when you catch it right at the right moment, you want to watch for that right moment, which is when the pigment is starting to dry and it turns a little matte. Right here, this area right here is still very shiny. That means it's still very wet, and we can easily add more pigment, but it would be very hard to lift anything out. until it starts to dry. It's okay right in here. Love this. That's such a perfect timing. And we'll just let that dry. So there's my first steps there. I'm going to let this dry, and I'm going to come back in here on my leaves and add just a touch. Or do I want to do that? No, I don't want to do that yet. I'm going to come in and do this little grouping of berries right here. Let's take these away. Let's do, I like doing groupings, and I work that way quite a bit, and then as I go through the painting process, I start isolating smaller areas to paint. So just the permanent rose right in here, coming down this little berry in shadow. Let's pull a little yellow into that. With these three colors, it's just a magical mix. They can create just about any color that you want. The only things that they're limited in is with watercolor, there's a lot of different properties in watercolor. These colors are staining and transparent. So they will actually stain the surface of the paper, and they're very transparent. So if you had a dark area and tried to lay this color on top of that dark area, it wouldn't show up. It would just look very, what's the word? It just wouldn't show up as if you had used an opaque color over the top. Then it would lay on top of the surface of the dark paint and would show up nicely. But not so with the transparent staining colors. They tend to disappear sort of underneath. If that kind of makes sense. I'm trying to make my words make sense here. Let's see here. I think that's good. And then I'm going to move into my Winsor Blue Green Shade right into, this is a leaf shadow and a leaf, and I'm going to just move in with my Winsor Blue Green Shade right into that shadowy leaf. And you'll see how that will work later on in the painting. And just kind of bring that down. Wick up the extra moisture. My paper's on a slant, so all of the extra moisture just runs down. I really love this. I like that mixing of colors and pigments. Let's maybe drop a little bit of yellow down in here. Then let's come back up like we did here. Back up to the top. And I'm just going to look at my photo again and find the areas that I want to give a little highlight to. That'll give our berries some shine too. Now the paper's still very wet down here, so I can't do any lifting there yet, but I can right up here. Maybe a little touch of light here, and I'm going to pretty much just let that dry. I am going to bring a little blue outer edge in here. Smooth that out a little bit. Yeah, my nose is running. I don't know why. I'm going to grab a Kleenex. As soon as I started videotaping, my nose started running. Crazy. This brush that I'm using right now is a Robert Simmons White Sable also, just like the number 14 that I was using. This is a number 6. Here's a number 6 that's brand new. Got a nice point. It's still pretty white. Here's an older number 6. This one that you'll notice doesn't have the nice point on it. It's kind of scrubbed off a little bit. I use this worn brush for lifting when my color is still damp on the surface of my paper. It's a beautiful little brush to use, and even though it's not new and the point isn't good, look at how nicely it lifts. When I'm lifting, I'm not scrubbing. It's just a gentle touch at the right moment to pick up a little bit of pigment. Gives me some nice highlights and soft edges. Now I can also come in, I'm going to use a larger brush here. I'm going to come here and dampen this area right here, and then I'm just going to touch up into that area that I just painted, and that's going to soften that line. Okay, let's just let that dry for a minute and I'll come back to you.